Today, the Celtics are champions. What does this mean for Jason Tatum and his growing legacy? Meanwhile, Luka legend loses. Did he do enough or actually too much? That narrative's back. And finally, an absolutely bonkers segment. When I saw this at 10 o'clock, I said, Brew, you're going to despise this segment.
You did.
A way too early edition of King of the...
It wasn't as bad as I thought.
Yeah. Really?
Can I tell you what's happening?
Major gaffes, but not quite.
There's one or two things you're going to disagree with. That's fine. But Wilds is just continuing to try to sow division between you and I.
He is.
But you hadn't even seen it yet. And Wilds like, Brew, you're going to hate this.
I've been on a hot streak.
No, it wasn't very gentlemanly.
Let me get it.
Just do the show.
What was it?
Just do the show.
What was it?
It's what always falls. Just do the show.
Your vape?
Just do the show.
I myself smoke a pipe, so I understand. We start with banner.
A cigarette with one of those long.
Oh yeah, 101 Dalmatians.
Yes.
We start with banner number 18, gentlemen sweep. Celtics got up by 10 in their first quarter, never looked back. Jalen wins final MVP. Tatum gets another 31-point game. Here he is after the game.
Oh my God. It's a surreal feeling. We did it. We did it! Oh my God, we did it. We have a resilient group. We've been through a lot as a team over the last couple years, over my 7 years. What they gonna say now? What they gonna say now?
Okay, Brew, what are you going to say now?
Well, congratulations. And they proved a lot. Look, one thing they proved is they're not going to end up, Nick, obviously, like the great Sacramento Kings team, and I call them great, but Chris Webber, Vlade Divac, Mike Bibby, that kept getting close. Peja Stojakovic, that Portland team that lost to the Lakers with Rasheed Wallace. Like, we've seen something. We kind of
Malone Jazz.
Usually, right. They got close.
Finals. Yeah.
The Steve Nash Suns with Amari Stoudemire. So we talk about teams going, climbing the hill, and eventually you'll get there. Not everybody gets there. Yeah. And they did get there, and they got there with young guys, like 26-year-old Tatum, 27-year-old Jaylen Brown. So they proved that. I'm also going to give props to Joe Mazzulla, and I've talked about how he should get a contract extension.
You go.
He is off my hot seat officially. Nice. But I'm going to say that everybody talks about their great 8, right? But when we look at it, Al Horford was their starting center in the finals. He's 38 years old
and
past his prime.
Yep.
Right, and past his prime. Porzingis, who we know is good and talented, but he's always been injury prone to the point he became a journeyman. This is his 4th team, and he's not even 30 years old, I don't believe. Couldn't work out in Dallas. And then you got Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, who aren't like great players, but they're in the rotation and got big minutes. And so Mazzulla has gotten more out of these guys than a lot of coaches have, no doubt. And then the three-point shooting. That's him. Now, I'm sure Brad Stevens and their brain trust has had something to do with that, especially last year. But under Ime Udoka 2 years ago when they got to the finals, they were 9th in the league in three-point attempts. Mazzulla's first year last year, they went up to 2nd. And this year, they led the league in the regular season and the playoffs in three-point attempts. And by far, they led the league in terms of percentage of your shots attempts that were three-pointers.
Can I add to that from Tom Havstro? Took more three-pointers than any champion in NBA history, 47%.
Yeah, and it's a copycat league, so you're probably going to see more and more of it going forward from other teams. But, of course, Tatum proved he can be the best player on the championship team. Jaylen Brown proved he should have been first team, not first team, but should have been all NBA. I had him on my 3rd team, but he didn't.
He was one of the first guys to miss.
Yeah, he should have been on the all NBA team. So congratulations to them. I don't think, and we'll get into it, they're an all-time great team, but this was one of the most dominant seasons in NBA history.
So they proved a number of things. First things first, I will say they proved me wrong. Classic 3.
Rare.
It is rare, but that's why it has to be acknowledged. I doubted them every step of the way, not meaning I picked against them in each round, but I'll be honest, there were a lot of teams in the East that if they were healthy, I would have picked to beat them.
I was going to say, did you pick them to get to the final? I don't remember.
I did once we saw all the injury. You know what I mean? Once all the but I doubted them. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that I would have been correct that if those teams were healthy. I'm saying I doubted them. I picked against them in the finals. And if Minnesota had made it, I would have picked against them. If Denver had made it, I would have picked against them. I was wrong because I overemphasized how good their best was and underemphasized I overemphasized the importance of how good their best was and underemphasized the importance of their 1 through 5. So I'm going to give you a fact that is unbelievable, and then I'm going to show you a comp. The worst 5-game stretch as far as scoring goes, Boston had all year, were the 5 games in the finals. They all regular season, they didn't score fewer than 540 over a 5-game stretch. All playoffs before the finals, they didn't score fewer than 538 in a 5-game stretch. They scored 508 points, and they rolled. Yeah. They had their worst offensive stretch of the season at theoretically the worst time, and they won pretty easily. You know what I mean? As far as 4-1 and dominated big stretches of every game really, except for game 4. And the comp that Brew first mentioned, now that we have seen the finals performance, let's look to the last team to win a title where their best player, we don't even know necessarily who it is, but their 5-man team is excellent. And it's almost point for point. Just take 3 away from White and give them to Horford, and the Horford thing's weird because he was a reserve, then he became a starter, and you know what I mean? And
you know what else, Nick? That says a lot because that was obviously an era when scoring was way
down.
And this is way up.
Right, so they defense and selflessness won the day. I did think in the second half, it was a nice place to be in, second half of last night's game, I did think Tatum and Brown were kind of taking turns trying to steal finals MVP from each other. But not in a bad way. It was, we have such control of the game, we can do it. And so and when you talk about them being built out as a team, they even have a guy whose role is half-court buzzer beaters. I'm joking, but not really joking. It's like Peyton. And Mike Breen, great job by him calling it out, saying he loves these, he practices these. He obviously has a bigger role than that. But for Peyton Pritchard to be like, hey, it's the finals, your minutes are going to be cut significantly, but we are going to use you in this thing we know you're uniquely great at. And for him to hit 2, first player in NBA Finals history to do anything like that, it speaks to, you're right, Mazzulla I owe an apology to. I don't feel like I owe an apology to many people. You can be wrong and I owe apologies. I do owe an apology to Joe Mazzulla. I was very hard on him last year, and I doubted whether or not he could grow from what I thought were obvious mistakes. And the team loves him. He pressed the right buttons. I thought the Kristaps playing yesterday could have blown up on him. It didn't.
Willis Reed-esque, though.
Right. And so they are an excellent team by the truest definition of team.
I think Mazzulla is one of the top coaches in the league right
now. From a hot seat to extension and
I'm not saying like top 3, but he's one of the top coaches. Like he should have security for a long time.
You want to go, Wilds, before we move on?
Well, I've got a few things. I'll float some.
This is your day, man.
No, it's
all dressed
really
up. You're all dressed up.
It's his second
I would
wedding.
never steal the spotlight from him.
He's trying to have a second wedding while still married, so it's a little not totally.
To Denver?
Yeah, to Denver.
How'd the Celtics do against Denver?
Well, so that's exactly. See, he's at the altar talking about his
Josh, is that a fact?
That's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing.
The Celtics were 500 above against every team except Denver in any event.
Unbelievable.
I'm going to float. I talked to Nick about this upstairs. This was one of my takes. Regular season matters. Do you buy that, Brew? They're the first team since the 16-17 Warriors to have the best regular season record and the best and win the championship to the point where the Bucks social media, and I understand it's kind of like fodder, but the social media does not actually run the team. But the Bucks put a tweet out like the regular season doesn't matter. Now it matters. And they were kind of attacked for it. Do you think this? I was like, you know what? We played hard all year. We found our mistakes or we did whatever and we won it. Versus a lot of teams are like, you know what? We'll flip the switch or we'll do some experimenting or whatever.
And look, we've seen Miami last year.